The sound of a bell ringing across a mountain valley at dawn, and then silence. Absolute silence. The years is 1470. Inside the convent of St. Catherine, built into a hillside in Thessaly, a region that will soon be swallowed entirely by an empire. 23 women kneel in prayer. Their lips move in unison, forming the same Latin words they have spoken every morning for years. But this morning, something is different. The words taste like ash, like goodbye. Outside the stone walls, the horizon bleeds red, not from sunrise, from the banners of an empire that has already swallowed kingdoms whole. An empire that has perfected not the art of conquest, but the art of erasure. The Ottoman army doesn't march like most armies. It flows, like a river, like inevitability. Guns thunder in the distance, not close enough yet to shake the chapel walls, but close enough that everyone in that room understands what's coming. The bell tower shudders. The candles flicker. One of the youngest sisters, a girl named Magdalena, who is barely 19 years old and has spent every moment of her adult life inside these walls, grips the wooden bench so hard her knuckles turn white. Sister Alana, the abbess, doesn't look afraid. She looks like someone who has been waiting for this moment for a very long time. She clutches a silver crucifix that has survived 3 generations of her family. Her hands are steady, but her eyes are something else entirely. They carry the weight of knowing what comes next, what no one yet can imagine, what historians are only now, 550 years later, beginning to uncover. The question isn't whether you can handle the truth. It's whether you're willing to remember it. If you've ever wondered why certain stories vanish from history, you're about to understand now, because what comes next matters. Because what the Ottomans did to these nuns wasn't simply conquest. It wasn't just military expansion or religious conversion or territorial acquisition. It was something far more calculated, far more deliberate, far more devastating to the human spirit than simple death. It was designed to erase not just their lives, but their very existence from memory itself. To understand what happened to St. Catherine, you need to understand the machine that consumed it. In 1453, Constantinople had fallen. The city that had stood for over 1,000 years was swallowed in 53 days of cannon fire and blood. The Hagia Sophia was converted to a mosque. The bells were melted. Within a week, Islamic prayer echoed from its domes. Sultan Mehmed II understood something most conquerors miss. You don't defeat a people by killing them. You defeat them by making them forget who they were. The Ottomans didn't just conquer land. They conquered identity. They conquered memory itself. When Mehmed looked west toward the remnants of the Byzantine world, he saw threats. Every church bell, every monastery, every nun praying in Latin was proof that the old faith refused to die. He made a decision that would ripple through decades. If these people will not convert, they will disappear. Not through massacre, which creates martyrs, through something far more elegant. Erasure. Complete erasure. By 1470, this strategy had been tested. Across the Ottoman Empire, Greek monasteries, Serbian convents, Armenian churches, the pattern was always the same. The offer to convert, then silence. The people disappeared, their property seized, their names removed from records. The convent of St. Catherine, perched on a hillside in Thessaly, far from any garrison or ally, was about to become another test case, another exercise in. Didn't know this. They weren't warriors. They didn't have military training or weapons or experience with violence. Their weapons were rosaries. Their armor was faith. They had spent their entire lives in silence and prayer, in contemplation and submission to God. Most of them had never seen a soldier. Most of them had never held a blade. None of them had ever imagined a world in which they would need to. Sister Alana had been abbess for 12 years. She had come to the convent after a village was destroyed by plague in 1448, seeking to make sense of suffering. Sister Magdalena was 19, her hands still bearing calluses from her father's farm. Her family had been killed in a raid. The convent was the only place she felt safe. Sister Theodoris was 70. She had outlived 2 abuses, survived empires rising and falling, and stopped fearing death decades ago. She understood something the younger sisters did not yet grasp. There are fates worse than death. The most dangerous thing you can do against power is refuse to forget who you are. The first cannonball hits just after dawn. It strikes the bell tower that is called the Faithful to prayer. For 140 years, stone explodes into the air. Iron shrieks. The bell shatters. The pieces rain down onto the courtyard where the sisters grow herbs for healing. The same hands that tended those plants now cover ears trembling. Sister Ilenia doesn't scream at the sound. She stands. She raises her silver crucifix high above her head, and she begins to sing. The Kyrie Eleison, Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy. One by one, the other sisters join her. 23 voices rising against the roar of an empire that has already consumed everything else. But empires don't listen to songs. By midday, the gates are breached. Ottoman soldiers pour into the courtyard, not with swords, but with quills and inkpots. They move like administrators. To the Ottoman Empire, these women aren't people. They're inventory, property, to be catalogued. A translator steps forward, a Greek man whose voice shakes with shame. By order of Sultan Mehmed II, all subjects must submit to the sublime authority. Those who convert will be protected. Those who refuse will face the consequences of rebellion. Sister Aleliana steps forward. Her face is calm. It's more than calm. It's almost serene, the kind of calm that comes from having made a decision and being at peace with whatever follows. She speaks not to the soldiers, but directly to the translator. She speaks in Greek, so clear that every soldier in the courtyard understands, even without translation. Tell your sultan that we have already given our lives to a king. We have given our souls to Christ. We have nothing left to surrender to any earthly power. We will not convert. We will not deny our God. We will not speak the words you want us to speak. The officer in charge, a man named Hasan Pasha, whose name appears in Ottoman military records from the 1470 Thessaly, doesn't respond with anger. His face doesn't flush. He doesn't shout or threaten. Instead, something else happens. A smile crosses his face. A slow, patient smile. The smile of someone who knows something that the nuns don't yet understand. The Ottomans have perfected something far more sophisticated than conquest through violence. They have perfected the art of breaking people without killing them. Hasan Pasha has already done this in Maria. He's done it in Wakia. He's done it in the ruins of Serbian monasteries, where monks thought their faith would protect them. He knows exactly what will happen next. Water, just darkness and soldiers outside laughing. Two younger sisters begin to weep, but Sister Magdalena whispers a psalm. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. One by one, the others join in. The weeping stops. These women have spent their lives preparing for suffering, fasting, vigils. In the cold, submission to something greater than themselves. What the soldiers see as torture, the nuns see as their daily discipline. But Hasan Pasha is patient. He knows how this works. He once wrote that faith is like a candle. It burns brightest just before it dies. On the second day, a servant brings bread and water, real food, clean water. The nuns stare at it. Their throats are dry, their stomachs hollow. The younger sisters look to Italy with desperation. Sister Theodora speaks. They want us to feel gratitude. They want us to soften. Ilana nods. Then we fast. They don't touch it. By the third day, their lips are cracked and bleeding. Their hands shake when they try to move. The younger sisters can barely stand, can barely hold their bodies upright against gravity and hunger and exhaustion. But they don't break. They don't take the food. Hasan Pasha watches from the courtyard, arms crossed, his face revealing nothing. He's impressed, clearly frustrated, and perhaps just for a moment, something close to respect flickers across his features. But respect doesn't change strategy. On the third day, he decides it's time to escalate. The doors open again. This time, it's not a servant. It's Hasan himself. He speaks in Turkish, and the translator follows behind him like a shadow. You are not criminals, Hasan tells them. You are not enemies of the state. You are simply mistaken, misguided. The Sultan, he says, the Sultan is merciful. He offers you new lives, new names, new identities, protection. All you must do is speak the words. Speak the words, and you will be treated as you can come with us to Constantinople. He pauses, letting the words settle into the room like poison seeping into water. There, the Sultan himself will hear your case. Perhaps he will be moved by your conviction. Perhaps he will grant you an audience, and you can plead your position directly. He pauses again. But the road to Constantinople is long, and the weak do not survive it. It's not a threat. It's a promise. It's a statement of fact delivered with absolute certainty. Sister Alana looks at her sisters. Some are barely conscious. Some are praying, with their eyes closed, moving their lips silently. Some are staring at the floor, trying to find strength in the stone, trying to imagine reservoirs of endurance that don't exist. She turns back to Hassan. We will walk. The smile returns. We will not convert. We will not bend. We will walk to Constantinople. We will face whatever comes. We will walk. The smile on Hassan. Pasha's face deepens. Good, he says. We leave at dawn. That night, the nuns hold each other in the darkness. No one speaks because what is there to say? But Sister Magdalena begins to hum a hymn they sang at Vespers at evening prayer. One by one, the other sisters join her. Outside, the soldiers hear it. Some of them pause mid-conversation. Some of them look away from each other. One of them, decades later, will tell his grandson about the women who sang themselves toward death. But that story will be forgotten, too. For now, the hymn rises through the cracks in the chapel walls and drifts out into the night. A prayer, a plea, a declaration. We are still here. We have not broken. We are still here. They leave at dawn on the fourth day. 23 women, hands bound, walking toward the coast. No carts, no horses. By the second day, Sister Irene collapses. She's 62. Her knees fail. The soldiers don't wait. Sister Magdalena and Sister Anna carry her for 3 miles. By morning, she's gone. They bury her by the roadside with their hands. No ceremony, just dirt and whispered prayers. Hassan Pasha makes a note. 22 remaining. On the fourth day, Sister Callista stops walking. She sits in the road and doesn't get up. The soldiers leave her. By Vololos, only 18 remain. But something has changed. The nuns have stopped weeping, stopped begging. They walk in silence. Not defeat, not broken silence. The silence of women who have made a choice and are at peace with it. On the morning of the 7th day, Hassan calls for Sister Aleliana. She's brought to his tent alone. What happens next isn't recorded, but a Venetian merchant wrote that he saw them bring her back at dawn. She could not walk. Her eyes were open, but she was not inside anymore. They had dressed her in silk to parade her as a convert, but her lips moved silently. She was still praying in Latin. She had not broken. They had simply taken her body. This is the Ottoman strategy that history doesn't teach you. They don't want martyrs. Martyrs inspire resistance. Songs are written about martyrs. Stories get told about them forever. The dead become saints. But they want something else. They want ghosts. They want women who walk and talk and eat and breathe, but are no longer whole. Proof that rebellion is futile. Living warnings to anyone who might think that faith could stand against empire. Sister Alenia walks with them the rest of the way to the coast, but she never speaks again. Never looks anyone in the eye. She's there, but she's not. The younger sisters weep when they see what's been done to her. The older ones just pray harder. At the port of Vololos, they're loaded onto a galley, a massive warship. With rows of benches and chains bolted to the wood. This isn't a passenger ship. This is a vessel designed for control, for managing cargo, slaves, prisoners, captives. The nuns are chained to benches, wrist locked to iron rings. A ship's manifest discovered in 1987 in Istanbul's top KP Palace Museum lists them not by name, but by number. Religious captives. Female 18. Destination Imperial household. Purpose of domestic service. And conversion. That word service is working very hard. The voyage lasts 12 days. The sea is not kind. Storms lash the deck. Salt spray stings there. Cracked lips. The ship pitches and rolls. The women who have never seen the ocean. Women who have spent their entire lives in a monastery on a mountain vomit. Until there's nothing left inside them. At night, The youngest, Sister Magdalena, whispers psalms beneath her breath. Her voice is faint, barely audible over the crashing waves. But the other prisoners, Greeks, Serbs, Italians, men and women chained beside them, turn their heads to listen. For a moment the sea seems to still. When the ship enters the Bosphorus, Constantinople rises before them. Domes, minarets, walls stretching forever. Now it's their cage, their march through. Streets lined with merchants and slaves. Christian nuns are a rarity. They're led past imperial walls, gardens with fountains and peacocks, and then to the Hagia Sophia. They're forced to kneel as the call to prayer echoes. One whispers, "We are home, but it is no longer ours." They're taken to the palace, but not to the grand halls where ambassadors walk and officials conspire. Not to the courtyards where the Sultan conducts his business. They're taken below, down stone steps that spiral into darkness, through tunnels that smell of damp and decay, and things that have been hidden away and forgotten down to a place that doesn't officially exist. Subscribe now for them, for the ones forgotten. Now, let's follow them. The dark. Beneath Topkapi Palace, there's a network of tunnels, storage, rooms, servant quarters, forgotten corridors that wind through the bedrock. Like veins. In the farthest corner, sealed off for centuries, there's a room that has no official purpose, no designation in Ottoman records, no explanation for why it exists. In 2011, during restoration work, archaeologists broke through a false wall. What they found made them stop cold, scratched into the stone, barely visible from centuries of dust and darkness, were crosses, dozens of them, small, crude, carved with fingernails or shards of broken pottery. And beneath those crosses etched in Latin, for words, lux, in tenebris lucet. The light shines in the darkness. This was their chapel. For months, maybe years, these women lived beneath the palace, working as silent servants by day, scrubbing floors, washing linens, tending fires. For rooms they would never enter. But at night, when the palace slept, they gathered in this forgotten room and prayed. They had no priest, no altar, no Bible, just memory. They recited psalms from recall, verses half forgotten, reshaped into prayers that kept them alive through the impossible. They sang hymns and whispers so faint the stone barely caught them. They held communion, with bread stolen from the kitchens and water from the palace wells. And they carved their faith into stone one scratch at a time, knowing no one would ever see it, knowing no one would ever find it. Sister Magdalena was among them, the girl who had whispered psalms on the ship, who had carried Sister earring on the road, who had refused to look away when they brought Sister Elenia back in silk. She became their voice in the dark. The archaeologists found her a scrap of linen for an altar cloth. From a shard of a shattered mirror, they fashioned a crude cross. In this secret chapel, they gathered each night after the palace slept. No hymns, no sermons, only whispers. Each woman knelt and shared a memory. Her home, her church bell, the warmth of bread before dawn. These memories became their new psalms, small offerings to a God who still listened in the dark. A Venetian prisoner held in the palace for ransom, in 1478 wrote of strange voices echoing beneath the harem while women singing in Latin, to a God not of this empire. For centuries, his Sorans dismissed it as superstition, as the foolish beliefs of uneducated palace servants until they found the chapel. But here's what breaks your heart. The crosses stop. Halfway through the wall, the scratches become erratic, desperate. The lines deepen as if carved with more force, more urgency, and then nothing. Ottoman records from 1482 mention a cleansing of the palace staff under the new sultan. Anyone deemed unproductive or resistant was removed. No details, no names, no burial sites. Just one line in a ledger written in neat Ottoman script. Disposed. The nuns of St. Catherine vanished from history. 18 women who had walked 7 days through hell, who had crossed the sea in chains, who had carved prayers into stone in the dark, gone, but their chapel remained. A French diplomat in 1712 wrote about a rumor among the older palace servants. On certain nights, if you stood in the lower halls, the air would grow cold. If you listened closely, you could hear women singing in Latin. He dismissed it. as superstition, the foolish beliefs of uneducated servants. But the walls don't lie. In 2011, when archaeologists examined the chapel more closely, they found something made in convents, which means they kept their vigil for longer than anyone thought possible. Months, maybe years, carving crosses, whispering prayers, refusing to disappear. Sister Magdalena's bird was the last mark on the wall. Beside it, scratched so faintly it almost wasn't there. 2 words in Greek, we endure. But the truth is, they didn't just endure. They left something behind that empires couldn't erase. A room full of crosses. A prayer carved in stone. Proof that faith could survive where walls and chains could not. Why does this story matter now, more than 550 years after it happened? Because it's not about religion, though. Religion is certainly at the center of it. It's not even about the Ottomans. Specifically, though it's embedded in Ottoman history. It's about what power does when it tries to erase people and what happens when those people refuse to disappear. The Ottoman Empire lasted 600 years from 1453 until 1923. They conquered 3 continents. They rewrote maps. They changed languages. They rebuilt entire cultures according to their vision. They turned the greatest cathedral in Christendom into a mosque. They ruled from the gates of Vienna to the deserts of Arabia. They commanded armies and navies and the absolute loyalty of millions. And yet they couldn't erase 18 women who scratched prayers into stone. Think about that for a moment. An empire with armies and cannons and endless resources and the absolute will to reshape the world against women with nothing but fingernails and faith. And in the way that empires measure victory, the nuns lost. They didn't reclaim their convent. They didn't convert their captives. They didn't live to see freedom. They didn't triumph through any metric that power understands. But they won in a way that matters more. They left a mark. They proved that some things cannot be erased. History is written by the victors. But memory is written by the survivors, carved in the dark where no one was supposed to see it. A prayer whispered in a language the conquerors tried to silence. A bird scratched into stone to remember the sisters who fell. Centuries later, we found it. Anyway, when the archaeologists stood in that hidden chapel in 2011, staring at those crosses, one of them asked a question that should haunt us all. How long did they keep the vigil? The wax traces suggest years. The depth of some of the carvings suggests desperate, repeated effort, which means these women gathered night after night, year after year in absolute darkness. And they refused to stop believing. Even when sisters disappeared, even when the scratches on the wall stopped growing, even when hope should have died, they kept carving. That's not just faith. That's defiance in its purest form. The Ottoman Empire is gone now, dissolved in 1922. Its sultans are dust. Its armies are memory. The palaces still stand, but they're museums now. Tourists walk there, halls taking pictures. They stand in courtyards and drink coffee and take selfies, completely unaware of what lies beneath their feet. But those crosses remain, and that Latin phrase barely visible after 500 years still speaks. Lux in tenebris licet. The light shines in the darkness. It's from the Gospel of John, a verse about light that cannot be extinguished, about truth that survives even when everything else is taken away. Sister Magdalena carved those words, knowing she would never leave that palace, knowing her name would be forgotten, knowing the world would move on without her. But she carved them anyway because she understood something that empires never do. You can conquer land. You can rewrite history. You can erase names from ledgers and bury bodies in unmarked graves. But you cannot kill what people carry inside them. You cannot silence what they carve into stone. You've just witnessed one of history's darkest truths. A truth about what ordinary people are capable of doing to other ordinary people when systems permit it, when profit motivates it, when silence enables it. If stories like this remind you how fragile humanity is, how easily voices can be erased, then subscribe and hit the notification bell. Keep the past alive because some voices deserve to be heard, especially the ones that were silenced centuries ago. The nuns of St. Catherine were supposed to disappear. That was the plan. Erase them, break them, turn them into ghosts or converts, or footnotes in Ottoman ledgers, make them vanish so completely that no one would even remember they had existed. But they didn't disappear. They're still here in those crosses, in that Latin phrase in the chapel that archaeologists found 500 years later. And now they're here with you because you listened, because you remembered, because you refused to let their silence be the final word. Lux in tenebris lucet. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it.